The galaxy was old, very old. Thousands of species had risen from their home worlds, built great empires, and spread across the stars. They had fought wars, made peace, and created a council to govern all known space. But through all of this, through 10,000 years of history, there was one rule that every species followed without question. Do not wake the humans. The warning was carved into the galactic core itself. It was written in every language known to exist. It floated in space near a small yellow star, repeated on millions of beacons that never stopped broadcasting. The message was simple: Sol 3 is forbidden. Do not approach. Do not scan. Do not make contact. Let them sleep. Nobody knew who wrote the warning. The oldest species said it was already there when they first reached the stars. Some said the humans wrote it themselves. Others said it was left by races that no longer existed, races that had learned the hard way why humanity should never be disturbed. Ambassador of the Republic had studied the ancient texts for 300 years. He was old, even by his species' standards, and he had read every document about the humans that still existed. Most of it was myth and legend, stories passed down through generations, tales of a species so dangerous that the entire galaxy had agreed to leave them alone. They were warriors, would tell anyone who asked. Not like us, not like anyone. They did not fight for territory or resources. They fought because something inside them needed conflict. They were never satisfied with peace. The stories said that humans had once ruled a vast empire. They had conquered worlds with ease. Their technology was not better than others, but their spirit was different. They never surrendered. They never stopped. If you killed one human, 10 more would come. If you destroyed one ship, 100 would arrive. They were like a fire that could not be put out. But then, one day, they simply stopped. They returned to their home world and went to sleep. Some said they grew tired of war. Others said they had defeated everyone worth fighting and lost interest. The truth was lost to time. All that remained was the warning. The Empire did not believe in warnings. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Burning Star, and looked at the forbidden system on her screen. She was tall for her species, with silver skin and 4 arms that moved with deadly grace. She had conquered 12 star systems in her career. She had never lost a battle, and she did not fear old stories. The humans are a myth, she said to her officers. A tale created to keep weak species away from valuable territory. Sol 3 has resources we need. We will take them. Her second-in-command, a young officer named, shifted nervously. Admiral, the Galactic Council has forbidden any approach to that system. If we violate the law, we will face sanctions. Laughed, it was a cold sound. The Council is weak. They hide behind rules because they lack the strength to take what they want. The do not hide, we conquer. The fleet moved toward Sol 3, 100 warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. They were the pride of the Empire, the most powerful force in their region of space. Nothing could stand against them. As they approached the forbidden system, the ancient beacons activated. Warning messages filled every communication channel. Automated voices spoke in 1,000 languages, all saying the same thing: turn back. Do not proceed. Let them sleep. Ordered the beacons destroyed. Her ships fired, and one by one the ancient warnings went silent. The Admiral smiled. She enjoyed breaking things that others considered sacred. On the distant world of Prime, Ambassador felt a chill run through his body. He was sitting in his study, reading old documents, when something made him look up. He could not explain it. It was like a whisper in his mind, a feeling that something terrible had just begun. He walked to his window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a direction he could not see, someone had made a terrible mistake. "Fools," he whispered, "what have they done?" The fleet entered the Sol system. They scanned the planets and found what they expected: a quiet, peaceful system with one habitable world. Earth, Sol 3, the forbidden planet. From space it looked beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. There were no signs of advanced civilization on the surface. No cities, no technology, no ships, just nature, wild and untouched. "You see," said triumphantly, "there is nothing here. The humans are gone if they ever existed at all. This world belongs to the now." She ordered the invasion to begin. Drop ships launched from the fleet. Thousands of soldiers descended toward the planet's surface. They expected no resistance. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The first ship landed in a mountain region. The soldiers stepped out, weapons ready, and looked around at the strange alien world. Trees, rocks, sky, nothing unusual. Then the ground shook. Deep beneath the mountain, ancient systems activated for the first time in 8,000 years. Power flowed through circuits that had waited in silence. Computers woke from their long sleep and began processing data. Sensors detected the alien presence on the surface. And then in a chamber buried 2 kilometers underground, a light turned red. The awakening protocol had been triggered. In cryogenic pods throughout the planet, frozen hearts began to beat again. Eyes that had been closed started to open. Minds that had dreamed of nothing for 8,000 years returned to consciousness. Admiral did not know it yet, but she had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. She had broken the one rule that everyone was supposed to follow. She had woken the humans. And humanity did not like being disturbed. The soldiers stood in the mountain valley, confused by what they were seeing. The ground was splitting open, not from an earthquake but in straight, perfect lines, like doors being opened. Sergeant Mako raised his weapon and pointed it at the widening crack in the earth. "What is happening?" he asked, but nobody answered. They were all watching the ground reveal its secret. Metal. There was metal beneath the dirt and rock. Smooth, dark metal that looked ancient but showed no signs of damage. As the ground continued to open, Mako realized he was looking at the roof of something massive. A structure buried deep underground. A structure that was now waking up. Lights flickered to life along the edges of the metal, red at first, then changing to amber, then to white. The hum of power generators filled the air. It was a sound that they had never heard before. It was old, very old, and very powerful. Admiral watched from orbit, her 4 hands gripping the arms of her command chair. "What are those readings?" she demanded. "What is powering those systems?" Her science officer looked at his screens with wide eyes. "Admiral, I do not understand these readings. The energy output from below the surface is enormous. It is bigger than anything I have ever seen." "That is impossible," said. "There was no civilization here. Our scans showed nothing." "The structures are shielded," the science officer replied, his voice shaking. "They were hidden from our sensors. There are thousands of them all over the planet. All of them are activating now." On the surface, Sergeant Mako watched as the metal doors finished opening. A ramp extended from the darkness below. For a long moment, nothing happened. The soldiers stood in silence, weapons ready, waiting. Then she appeared. The first human Mako had ever seen walked up the ramp and into the sunlight. It was a female, average height, with black hair and eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. She wore some kind of uniform, dark blue with symbols he did not recognize. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had just woken from a very long sleep. She looked at the soldiers. Then she looked up at the sky where the alien ships hung like dark clouds. Her expression did not change. She did not seem afraid or surprised or angry. She just looked disappointed. "Captain to command," she said, speaking into a device on her wrist. "We have visitors, hostile, approximately 40 soldiers at my location, many more in orbit." A voice crackled back through the device. It was male, calm and steady. "Understood, Captain. Status of awakening protocols. Proceeding normally. Primary fleet is at 70%. Ground forces at 50%. I am requesting permission to engage." Permission granted. Welcome back to the world. The woman smiled. It was not a warm smile. It is good to be back. Sergeant Mako finally found his voice. You, human, you are now prisoners of the Empire. Drop your weapon and surrender. Looked at him, just looked. Then she laughed. It was a soft sound, but it made Mako's blood run cold. He had fought in many battles. He had faced many enemies, but he had never felt fear like this before. Prisoners, repeated as if tasting the word. You come to our world, you break our sleep, and you want us to surrender. She shook her head slowly. You do not understand what you have done. Behind her, more humans were emerging from the underground facility, men and women in the same dark uniforms. Some carried weapons, others did not. All of them had the same look in their eyes, the look of hunters who had finally found their prey. Mako opened fire. His soldiers followed. Energy bolts flew toward the humans. She moved faster than Mako's eyes could follow. One moment she was standing still. The next moment she was among his soldiers, a blade in her hand that seemed to appear from nowhere. 3 fell before anyone could react. The other humans attacked. They did not use energy weapons. They used blades, their bare hands, brutal and efficient movements. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, every soldier was dead, stood among the bodies, not even breathing hard. She looked up at the sky again. Captain to Fleet Command, surface is secure, ready to receive orders. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that had been sealed for 8,000 years, Commander opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was the inside of his cryogenic pod. The second thing he saw was the flashing red light that meant someone had invaded Earth. He took a breath. His first breath in 8, it burned in his lungs, but it also felt wonderful. He was alive. He was awake. Status report, he said, his voice rough from disuse. A screen activated in front of him, showing data. Alien fleet in orbit, 100 warships, ground invasion in progress, awakening protocols activated across all continents. Read the information slowly. He was in no hurry. The aliens, whoever they were, had already made their fatal mistake. Now they would learn why the universe had agreed to let humanity sleep. He climbed out of his pod and walked through the facility. Around him, other pods were opening. Other humans were waking. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, commanders. The sleeping army of Earth was returning to life. Commander, a voice said behind him, turned to see a young man in a pilot's uniform. His name was, and he had been one of the best pilots in the fleet before the long sleep. Said nodding, you look rested. Smiled, 8,000 years of rest. I think I am ready for some action. They walked together to the command center. Screens showed the status of the human fleet. Ships hidden beneath the oceans. Ships buried under mountains. Ships floating in hollow asteroids throughout the solar system. All of them were activating. All of them were preparing for war. Do we know who they are? Asked, looking at the alien ships on the screen. Does it matter? Replied. Thought about it for a moment, then he laughed. No, I suppose it does not. In orbit, Admiral was receiving reports from the surface. All her landing parties had gone silent. The last transmissions had been screams and weapons fire, then nothing. Something was very wrong. Admiral, her communications officer said, voice trembling. We are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through. A human face appeared on her screen. A man with tired eyes and a calm expression. He looked at like she was an insect he had found in his home. I am commander of the Earth Defense Force, the man said. You have made a mistake. We were sleeping. We did not want to be disturbed, but you came anyway. Felt something she had never felt before. Fear, real fear, but she pushed it down. She was an admiral, she did not show weakness. I am Admiral of the Empire, she replied. Surrender now and we may show mercy. The human smiled. It was the same smile that had worn, cold, patient, dangerous. "Mercy," he said softly. "No, you do not understand. We do not want your mercy. We do not need it. We are going to show you why the universe told you to leave us alone." The transmission ended, and beneath the oceans of Earth, the ancient warships began to rise. The ocean boiled. Great columns of steam rose into the sky as something massive pushed up from the depths. Admiral watched from her flagship, unable to believe what she was seeing. Ships were emerging from the water. Human ships, dozens of them, then hundreds. They were black, angular, and covered in ancient symbols. They looked nothing like the elegant curves of vessels. These ships were built for one purpose only: war. Every line, every angle, every weapon was designed to destroy. "How is this possible?" whispered. "How did we miss this?" Her science officer was pale with terror. "They were shielded, Admiral, buried deep under the ocean floor. Our sensors could not see them. Nobody could see them. They have been waiting there for thousands of years." The human fleet rose into the sky. They moved in perfect formation, each ship knowing exactly where it needed to be. There was no confusion, no hesitation. They had practiced this maneuver before, many times before. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Silent Thunder. Around him, his crew worked their stations with calm efficiency. They had been asleep for 8,000 years, but their training had not faded. Their bodies remembered what to do. "Fleet status?" asked. His tactical officer, a woman named, checked her screens. She had been the greatest tactical mind of her generation, back when humanity was awake. That had not changed. 347 capital ships active, reported. 1,200 support vessels. 42,000 fighters ready for launch. All systems operational. Nodded, and the enemy. 100 ships, heavily armed but poorly organized. Their formation has gaps. Their shields are weak against kinetic weapons. They will not last long. "No," agreed, "they will not." Admiral finally found her voice. "All ships, battle formation. Prepare to engage the enemy." The fleet moved to obey. 100 warships that had conquered 12 star systems arranged themselves for combat. They charged their weapons and raised their shields. They were confident. They were proud. They were doomed. Looked at the alien fleet on his screen. He felt nothing but mild irritation. These creatures had broken his sleep. They had invaded his world. Now they would pay for that mistake. "Captain," he said into his communicator, "are you in position?" From somewhere below, his voice came back. "My ground forces have secured all landing zones. No alien survivors. We are ready to support the fleet action." "Good." The pilot's voice was eager. "Fighter squadrons ready to launch, Commander. Just give the word." Looked at, she gave him a small nod. Everything was ready. "All ships," said, his voice carrying across the human fleet. "This is Commander. 8,000 years ago, we chose to sleep. We were tired of war. We had defeated every enemy worth fighting. We thought we had earned our rest." He paused, looking at the alien ships on his screen. "We were wrong. The universe has sent us a new enemy. They came to our home. They broke our peace. Now we will remind them why we were feared." His hand moved to the command panel. "All ships engage." The human fleet fired. Not energy weapons like the used. Something older, something more brutal. Kinetic rounds. Massive metal projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds. They crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. The first ship exploded before its crew even knew they were under attack. The second ship followed a heartbeat later. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth. Screamed orders at her crew. "Return fire, return fire." The weapons activated. Energy bolts flew toward the human ships. They hit shields that absorbed the impacts like they were nothing. The human ships did not even slow down. "Impossible," breathed. "Our weapons are having no effect." Her science officer was running calculations with shaking hands. "Their shields are different from anything we have seen. They absorb energy attacks and convert them to power. The more we shoot them, the stronger they become. Launched with his fighter squadron, 5,000 small, fast ships poured out of the human fleet like angry insects. They weaved between the vessels, targeting weapons and engines with surgical precision. "This is too easy," muttered as he destroyed his third target. "I expected more from the species that thought they could conquer Earth." His wingman, a pilot named Suki, laughed over the communication channel. "Do not complain. After 8,000 years of sleep, I wanted a gentle warm-up." On the Silent Thunder was coordinating the battle. She moved ships like pieces on a board, always putting them exactly where they needed to be. They tried to regroup, tried to form a defensive formation, but anticipated every move. "They are trying to retreat to the outer system," she reported. "Should I let them?" Considered for a moment. "No, if they escape they will return with more ships. This ends here." Nodded and issued new orders. Human ships moved to cut off the escape route. There would be no running. There would be no mercy. Admiral watched her fleet die around her. 60 ships gone, then 70, then 80. The humans were everywhere, their weapons unstoppable, their tactics perfect. This was not a battle, it was a slaughter. "Admiral," her communications officer said desperately, "we are receiving a transmission from the human commander." His flagship shook as another impact hit its shields. She did not care about shields anymore. She did not care about pride or glory. She just wanted to survive. "Put it through," she said, her voice hollow. His face appeared on her screen again. He looked exactly the same as before, calm, patient, not even breathing hard. "Admiral," he said, "your fleet is destroyed, your soldiers are dead, you have nothing left." "What do you want?" asked. It hurt to say those words. She had never asked that question before. She had always been the one making demands. "I want to understand," said. "The entire galaxy knew to leave us alone. The warnings were everywhere. Why did you ignore them?" Thought about lying, she thought about making excuses, but what was the point? She was going to die anyway. "Because I did not believe them," she admitted. "I thought the stories were myths. I thought you were nothing but old history." Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was almost sad. "That is the problem with history. People forget. They stop believing. They make the same mistakes again and again." "What will you do now?" asked. Looked at something off-screen. When he turned back, his expression had changed. It was harder, colder. "Your empire sent you here. Your empire will pay for that decision. We are going to remind the galaxy why they should let us sleep." The transmission ended. On the Silent Thunder turned to his crew. They were watching him, waiting for orders. These men and women had followed him into war 1,000 times before. They would follow him again. "Set course for space," he said. "We have a lesson to teach." The human fleet gathered around its commander. 347 warships, survivors of an age when humanity ruled the stars. They had been sleeping, dreaming of nothing, waiting for someone foolish enough to wake them. Now they were awake, and the universe would remember why that was a very bad thing. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The fleet was gone. 100 warships destroyed in less than 3 hours. Admiral was dead, and the humans were awake. Ambassador heard the report in his study on Prime. He sat very still for a long time, staring at nothing. The thing he had feared his entire life had finally happened. Someone had ignored the warnings. Someone had woken the sleeping giants of Sol 3. "May the stars have mercy on us all," he whispered. The Empire had 3 home systems. Each one was protected by defense stations, orbital weapons, and a home fleet of 50 ships. They had never been attacked. They had always been the attackers. They did not know how to defend. They would learn. The human fleet arrived at the first system without warning. Their ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of the main defense station. Before they could even raise their shields, the station was gone. A cloud of metal and fire where thousands of soldiers had lived just seconds before. Commander watched the destruction from his bridge. He felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, no guilt. This was simply what needed to be done. They had made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences. He said, "Status of the defense fleet. 50 ships attempting to form a battle line," reported. "They are disorganized, frightened. This will not take long." It did not take long. 20 minutes after the first shot was fired, the home fleet was destroyed. The humans did not lose a single ship. Led his fighters through the wreckage, looking for survivors. There were none. The human weapons left nothing behind but broken metal and silence. "Commander," reported, "the system is secure. What are your orders?" Looked at the planet below. Millions of lived there. Civilians, families, children. They had not chosen to attack Earth. That decision had been made by their leaders. "Leave the planet," said. "We do not make war on civilians, but destroy every military installation, every shipyard, every weapons factory. They will never threaten anyone again." The human fleet obeyed. Precision strikes hit military targets across the system. Ships, stations, factories, all reduced to dust. The civilian population watched from their cities, terrified but unharmed. When it was over, broadcast a message to the planet below. "People of," he said, his voice reaching every screen on the world. "Your fleet came to our home. They tried to conquer us. They failed. We have destroyed your military. We have taken your weapons, but we have spared your lives. Remember this mercy. Do not make us return." The fleet moved on to the second system. The result was the same: defense stations destroyed, military fleet eliminated, civilians untouched. A warning given, then silence. By the time the human fleet reached the third system, the government was in chaos. Leaders fled their positions. Military commanders refused to fight. Everyone knew what was coming, and no one wanted to be the one standing in humanity's way. The Galactic Council watched in horror. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries were suddenly united in their fear. Emergency meetings were called. Ambassadors scrambled to understand what was happening. "This is exactly what the warnings predicted," Ambassador told the Council. "The humans do not fight like us. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. Once they start, they continue until their enemy no longer exists." "What can we do?" asked the representative from the collective. "How do we stop them?" Shook his head slowly. "We cannot stop them. No one can. We can only hope they stop themselves." On the bridge of the Silent Thunder, Captain approached Commander. She had been overseeing ground operations during the campaign, making sure that civilian populations were protected while military targets were destroyed. "Commander," she said quietly, "the crew is concerned." Looked up from his tactical display. "About what?" "About how far we will go. They are beaten. Their military is destroyed. Their empire is finished. Is it not enough?" Was quiet for a moment. He understood the concern. 8,000 years ago they had gone too far. They had conquered everything, destroyed everyone who stood against them, and in the end they had grown so tired of war that they chose to sleep rather than continue. "It is enough," he said finally. "They will never threaten anyone again. We have made our point." Relax slightly. "So we return to Earth, we go back to sleep." "Not yet." Stood and walked to the main viewport. The stars stretched out before him, endless and cold. "The galaxy has forgotten why they feared us. They need to remember. We will visit the Galactic Council. We will remind them of the rule they should have enforced." The human fleet changed course. They were no longer heading for space. They were heading for the heart of galactic civilization. Worked at her station, calculating routes and analyzing data. She had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy, listening to the panic and fear that humanity's awakening had caused. "Commander," she said, "I am receiving reports from multiple systems. Species are fleeing the border regions. Fleets are being recalled to home worlds. The entire galaxy is afraid of us. Nodded, good, fear is a powerful teacher. Walked onto the bridge, still wearing his flight suit. He had been leading patrols around the fleet, making sure no one tried to attack them. Not that anyone would. The campaign had shown what happened to those who challenged humanity. Sir said, the pilots are asking about what happens next. Are we going to conquer the galaxy? Turned to look at the young pilot. Was eager, talented, and dangerous. Exactly the kind of warrior that humanity had always produced. But there was also intelligence in his eyes. The ability to think beyond just the next battle. No, said, we are not going to conquer anything. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We only wanted to be left alone. Then why did we sleep? Asked. If we just wanted peace, why hide underground for 8,000 years? Smiled sadly. Because peace is boring and we are not very good at being bored. When we are awake, we find reasons to fight. It is in our nature. So we chose to sleep, to remove ourselves from the universe before we did something we could not take back. Considered this. And now, what do we do now that we are awake? Looked back at the stars. The Galactic Council was waiting for them. Thousands of species, all terrified of what humanity might do next. They did not know that humanity was just as afraid of what they might become if they did not return to sleep soon. Now we finish what we started, said. We remind the galaxy of the rule, and then we go back to sleep, hopefully for another 8,000 years. The fleet continued on its journey. Behind them, 3 systems burned with the fires of their destroyed military. Ahead of them, the Galactic Council waited with fear and trembling. Humanity was awake, and the universe would never forget this moment. The Galactic Council chamber had stood for 15,000 years. It was the oldest structure in known space, a massive dome floating in the void between stars. Inside, representatives from every spacefaring species gathered to debate and decide the fate of the galaxy. They had seen wars, treaties, the rise and fall of empires. They thought they had seen everything. They had never seen anything like this. The human fleet arrived without warning. 347 warships materialized around the council station like ghosts appearing from the darkness. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply waited, their weapons powered and ready, their presence saying everything that needed to be said. Inside the chamber, chaos erupted. Ambassadors screamed at each other. Security forces rushed to their positions. Emergency protocols activated throughout the station, but everyone knew it was pointless. If the humans wanted to destroy them, there was nothing they could do to stop it. Ambassador stood at his place in the chamber, watching the panic with tired eyes. He had warned them. For 300 years, he had told anyone who would listen about the danger of waking humanity. Nobody had believed him. Now they were all believers. A communication request came through to the council's main screen. The chamber fell silent as the transmission was accepted. Commander's face appeared, larger than life, looking down at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. I am commander of the Earth Defense Force, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. I request permission to address the council. The council speaker, an ancient creature with too many legs and not enough spine, tried to find his voice. You have no right to speak here. You are not a member species. You are. I am the commander of the force that just destroyed the Empire in 72 hours, interrupted calmly. I believe that gives me the right to speak anywhere I wish. Now, may I have permission, or shall we do this the hard way? The speaker looked around the chamber. Every face showed the same expression, fear, pure, absolute fear. Permission granted, the speaker whispered. A shuttle detached from the silent thunder and flew toward the council station. Minutes later, Commander walked into the chamber. He was alone. No guards, no weapons visible. Just one human in a dark uniform, walking calmly into a room full of creatures that should have been his enemies. But they were not enemies. They were students about to receive a lesson. Walked to the center of the chamber. He looked around at the assembled species, taking his time, meeting their eyes one by one. Most looked away. A few tried to hold his gaze. None succeeded. 10,000 years ago began, humanity fought a great war. We fought against an alliance of species who believed they could conquer Earth. They were wrong. We destroyed them, every ship, every soldier, every world that supported them. The chamber was completely silent. No one moved, no one spoke. After the war, we realized something. We were too good at fighting. We enjoyed it too much. If we stayed awake, we would keep finding enemies. We would keep destroying. Eventually, there would be nothing left to destroy. Paused, letting his words sink in. So we chose to sleep. We buried ourselves deep in the earth and closed our eyes. We trusted the galaxy to follow one simple rule: leave us alone. In return, we would leave the galaxy alone. It seemed fair. He looked directly at where the representative usually sat. The seat was empty. There were no more representatives. The rule was broken. Admiral and her fleet came to our world. They attacked us in our sleep. They thought we were a myth. They thought the warnings were just stories. His voice grew harder. They were wrong. Ambassador stepped forward. It took all his courage, but he had spent 300 years studying humanity. He understood them better than anyone else in the room. He knew that this was a moment that would shape the future of the galaxy. Commander said, his voice steady despite his fear. We failed you. The Council should have enforced the rule. We should have stopped them before they reached your system. We did not. That failure cost lives on both sides. What can we do to make it right? Turned to look at the old ambassador. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. You are ambassador, said. We have records of your work. You tried to warn them. You studied our history, our nature. You understood why the rule existed. I did, admitted, but understanding and preventing are different things. Nodded slowly. Yes, they are. He turned back to the full chamber. The Council failed, but the failure was not complete. The warnings were still in place. The beacons still broadcast. Someone tried to maintain the rule. That is why we have not destroyed this station. Relief washed through the chamber. They were going to live, at least for now. But continued, and the relief turned cold. The rule must be stronger. What happened cannot happen again. The next time we are woken, we may not be so merciful. We may not stop with one empire. We may not stop at all. He raised his hand, and suddenly every screen in the chamber showed the same image. The human fleet, weapons charged, surrounding the station. This is what we can do when we are disturbed. This is what waits for anyone who ignores the rule. Look at it. Remember it. Pass it down to your children and your children's children. Let no one forget. The screens went dark. We are returning to Earth now. We will sleep again. But before we go, we will leave new warnings, more beacons, stronger shields around our system, and a promise. His voice dropped, becoming soft and cold at the same time. If we are woken again, there will be no speeches, no warnings, no second chances. We will simply destroy everything that is not human until the galaxy learns to leave us alone. He turned and began walking toward the exit. Then he stopped and looked back at Ambassador. You, Ambassador, you understand us. You should be in charge of making sure this never happens again. Bowed his head. I will do my best, Commander. Do better than your best, replied. The universe depends on it. He walked out of the chamber without looking back. 3 days later, the human fleet returned to Earth. The ships descended into the oceans, back to their hiding places. The soldiers returned to their cryogenic pods. The systems powered down, one by one, until the planet was quiet again. Commander was the last to sleep. He stood in the command center of the silent thunder, watching his crew settle into their pods. Captain, tactical officer, pilot, thousands of others, warriors who had done their duty and earned their rest. "Sleep well," said softly. "May the next 8,000 years be quieter than the last." He climbed into his own pod and closed his eyes. The last thing he heard was the hiss of cryogenic gas filling the chamber, then darkness, then nothing. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador was appointed as the new keeper of the rule. His first act was to triple the number of warning beacons around the Sol system. His second act was to create a mandatory education program for every species in the galaxy. The lesson was simple. There is a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. On that planet something sleeps, something ancient, something powerful, something that should never ever be woken. The universe had learned its lesson. The rule would be followed. Humanity would sleep in peace. At least until the next fool decided that myths were not real and warnings were meant to be ignored. When that day came, humanity would wake again. And the stars would tremble,